The wallet hit the ground with a soft thud, landing in a puddle of rainwater that reflected the gray November sky, and Natalie Bishop barely had time to register what happened before her feet were already moving toward the stranger who had just climbed into a taxi. "Wait, you dropped this." She grabbed the soaked leather wallet and sprinted toward the cab, but the vehicle was already pulling into traffic. Her sneakers splashed through puddles as she watched the taxi disappear around the corner of Fifth Avenue. She stood there breathing hard water dripping from her jacket, holding a stranger's wallet in her hands. Natalie looked down at the wallet. It was expensive, that much was obvious. The kind of thing that probably cost more than her monthly rent. She opened it carefully, hoping to find some identification, maybe a business card. Inside were several credit cards, all bearing the name Bennett Quinn. There was also a significant amount of cash and what looked like a membership card to some exclusive club she had never heard of. But no phone number, no address she could easily track down. She sighed and tucked the wallet into her bag. The rain was picking up again, and she was already 15 minutes late for her shift at the restaurant. Her manager was going to kill her. Natalie pulled her jacket tighter and hurried down the street, her mind already racing with what she should do. Turn it in to the police. Try to look him up online. She decided she would figure it out after work. The lunch rush at Marcello's Italian restaurant was brutal. Natalie barely had time to think about the wallet as she balanced plates of pasta and refilled water glasses for demanding customers. She had been working there for 3 years, ever since she moved to New York City to pursue her dream of becoming a writer. The dream was still alive, barely, but the reality of paying bills in Manhattan had forced her to take on more shifts than she would have liked. "Table 6 needs more bread," her coworker Sarah called out as she rushed past with a tray of drinks. Natalie nodded and grabbed a basket of breadsticks from the kitchen. Her feet ached, and she still had 4 hours left in her shift. When she finally got her break, she pulled out the wallet again and stared at the name, Bennett Quinn. She took out her phone and typed the name into a search engine. The results made her eyes widen. Bennett Quinn was apparently the CEO of Quinn Hospitality Group, one of the largest hotel chains in the country. His company owned luxury properties all over the world. There were dozens of articles about him, photos from charity galas and business conferences. He was 32 years old, unmarried, and worth an estimated $500 million. "Holy hell," Natalie muttered. She had just picked up a billionaire's wallet. She clicked on one of the images. Bennett Quinn had dark hair, strong features, and intense blue eyes that seemed to look right through the camera. He was handsome in that intimidating way that successful men often were, like someone who was used to getting exactly what they wanted. Natalie felt a strange flutter in her stomach that she immediately dismissed. This was not some romance novel. This was real life, and she needed to return his wallet. She found the main number for Quinn Hospitality Group and saved it in her phone. She would call tomorrow morning and arrange to return the wallet to his office. Simple, straightforward, professional, except it was not simple at all. When Natalie called the next morning, she was transferred 3 times before reaching someone who claimed to be Bennett Quinn's executive assistant. The woman's voice was cold and efficient. "I'm sorry, but Mr. Quinn is traveling internationally for the next 2 weeks. If you would like to drop the wallet off at our offices, I can ensure it's returned to him when he gets back." "Sure, I can do that," Natalie said. She had been hoping to just hand it off and be done with it, but she supposed dropping it at his office would work just as well. "We're located at 450 Park Avenue, 18th floor. Office hours are 9 to 5, Monday through Friday." Natalie wrote down the address. "Great, I'll bring it by this afternoon." She hung up and got ready for the day. She had a rare day off from the restaurant, which meant she could actually focus on her writing. Or at least, that had been the plan. Now she needed to trek across town to return a wallet to a man she would never meet. The Quinn Hospitality Group offices were exactly as intimidating as she had expected. The building was all glass and steel, with a lobby that looked like it belonged in a modern art museum. Natalie felt underdressed in her jeans and sweater as she approached the security desk. "I'm here to drop something off for Bennett Quinn," she said to the guard. He barely looked at her as he picked up a phone and made a call. A minute later, a young woman in a perfect suit appeared from the elevators. "I'm Michelle, Mr. Quinn's assistant. You have something for him." Natalie pulled the wallet from her bag. "He dropped it yesterday on Fifth Avenue. I tried to catch him, but he was already in a cab." Michelle took the wallet and examined it briefly. "Thank you for returning this. I'm sure Mr. Quinn will appreciate it." "No problem," Natalie said. She felt oddly disappointed. She was not sure what she had been expecting, maybe a reward or at least a more enthusiastic thank you, but this felt anticlimactic. "I'm glad I could get it back to him." She turned to leave, already thinking about the story she wanted to work on when she got home. Behind her, Michelle was already walking back toward the elevators, the wallet in her hand. Natalie pushed through the revolving doors and stepped back out onto the street, and that, she thought, was the end of that. But Bennett Quinn did not get the wallet, not for a long time. 3 weeks later, Bennett was sitting in his office staring at his computer screen with growing frustration. He had been looking for his wallet since the day he lost it, and every lead had gone nowhere. He had canceled all his credit cards immediately, of course, but the wallet itself had sentimental value. His father had given it to him the day he made his first million, back when the company was just starting to really take off. It was one of the few personal items he actually cared about. "Michelle," he called out, and his assistant appeared in the doorway almost immediately. "Yes, Mr. Quinn. Did anyone ever turn in my wallet, the one I lost last month?" Michelle frowned. "No, sir, nothing's been turned in." Bennett leaned back in his chair. "Are you sure?" "No one called or stopped by. I would have told you immediately if they had," Michelle said. She sounded slightly offended that he would even question her competence. "Right," Bennett said. "Thanks." After Michelle left, he returned to his work, but his mind kept drifting back to the wallet. He knew it was probably gone for good, either thrown away or kept by whoever had found it. But he could not shake the feeling that he was missing something important. What Bennett did not know was that Michelle had quit her job 2 days after Natalie dropped off the wallet. She had been planning her exit for months, having accepted a better position at a rival company. In the chaos of her departure and the hiring of a new assistant, the wallet had been left in a drawer in her desk, forgotten. By the time Bennett's new assistant, Jeremy, started going through the old files and office supplies, the wallet had been sitting there for almost 3 weeks. Jeremy found it on a Tuesday afternoon while looking for a stapler. He pulled open the bottom drawer of the desk he had inherited and saw the leather wallet sitting on top of a stack of old folders. "What the hell?" he muttered, picking it up. He opened it and saw Bennett Quinn's name on the credit cards. His boss's wallet. How had it ended up in his desk? He immediately took it to Bennett's office. "Mr. Quinn, I found this in my desk. I think it's yours." Bennett looked up and his eyes widened. "My wallet? Where did you find it?" "Bottom drawer of my desk. It must have been left there by Michelle." Bennett took the wallet and opened it, checking the contents. Everything was still there, all his cards, the cash, even the old photo of his parents he kept tucked behind his driver's license. "This is incredible. I've been looking for this for weeks." "Did Michelle leave a note or anything explaining where she found it?" Jeremy shook his head. "There was nothing with it. Do you want me to try to contact her and ask?" "Yes, please do that," Bennett said. "I need to know who returned this so I can thank them properly." But when Jeremy reached out to Michelle, her response was vague. She remembered someone dropping it off, maybe a young woman, but she had not gotten a name or any contact information. She apologized for forgetting to pass it along before she left the company. Bennett was frustrated but not surprised. Michelle had always been efficient, but she had also been preparing to leave during those last few weeks. Details had slipped through the cracks. He looked down at the wallet in his hands and wondered about the person who had returned it. In a city like New York, where people were always in a hurry and rarely went out of their way for strangers, someone had taken the time to track down his office and return his property. That meant something. "Jeremy, pull the security footage from the lobby for the past month," Bennett said. "I want to see who dropped this off." "Sir, that's going to be a lot of footage." "Then start looking," Bennett said. "Focus on the times when Michelle would have been at her desk. If someone came up to return something, it would have been during office hours." Jeremy nodded and left to make the request. Bennett knew he was probably being ridiculous. The person had returned his wallet, and that should be enough. But he found himself genuinely curious about who would go through that much effort. Most people would have just turned it in to the police, or more likely, kept the cash and tossed the rest. It took Jeremy 2 days to get the security footage, and another 3 days to actually go through it all. When he finally found the right clip, he brought his laptop to Bennett's office. "I think this is it," Jeremy said, turning the screen toward his boss. November 18th, 2:15 in the afternoon. Bennett watched the grainy security footage. A young woman approached the desk in the lobby, spoke briefly with the guard, and then waited. Even in the low-quality video, Bennett could see that she was pretty in an understated way. She had long brown hair pulled back in a ponytail and was wearing jeans and a simple sweater. She did not look like the type of person who usually came through their lobby. A few minutes later, Michelle appeared and the woman handed over the wallet. They exchanged a few words and then the woman left. "Can you get a better image of her face?" Bennett asked. Jeremy worked on the laptop for a minute, then pulled up a slightly clearer still image. The woman was looking toward the camera, and Bennett could see her features more clearly. She had a kind face, open and honest, with wide eyes and a small smile. There was something about her that made him want to know more. "Run a facial recognition search," Bennett said. "See if we can figure out who she is." Jeremy hesitated. "Sir, that's a little invasive, don't you think?" Bennett knew Jeremy was right, but he found that he did not care. "I just want to thank her properly. She went out of her way to return something valuable to me. The least I can do is acknowledge that." "I'll see what I can do," Jeremy said, though he still looked uncomfortable. The facial recognition search turned up nothing useful. The woman was not in any public databases that Jeremy could access legally. Bennett considered hiring a private investigator but stopped himself. That definitely crossed a line. He was being obsessive about this and he knew it, but he could not explain why it mattered so much. Maybe it was because genuine kindness was so rare in his world. Everyone wanted something from him, whether it was money or connections or opportunities. This woman had wanted nothing except to do the right thing. "Try looking at the footage from the street cameras," Bennett said a few days later. "See if we can track where she came from or where she went." Jeremy sighed but did as he was asked. The street cameras showed the woman walking from the direction of the subway station and then returning the same way after leaving the building. She did not get into a car or a taxi. She took the train, like millions of other New Yorkers. Bennett stared at the footage, watching the way she walked with her hands in her pockets, her head down against the wind. She looked like she belonged to the city in a way that he never had, despite living here for over a decade. There was something grounded about her, something real. "Expand the search," he told Jeremy. "I want to know if she appears on any other cameras in the area. Maybe she works nearby or lives in the neighborhood." Jeremy looked at him with concern. "Mr. Quinn, with all due respect, this is starting to feel a little excessive. She returned your wallet. Maybe we should just let it go." Bennett knew Jeremy was right. This was excessive, but he had never been the type to let things go, especially when he wanted something. "Just do it, Jeremy, please." Over the next few weeks, Jeremy compiled a rough pattern of the woman's movements. She appeared on various street cameras in Midtown, always during similar hours, always on foot or using public transportation. She seemed to frequent the area around 42nd Street, which was crowded with restaurants and shops. It was possible she worked at one of them. "I've narrowed it down to about a 6-block radius where she appears most frequently," Jeremy said, showing Bennett a map with highlighted areas. "If she works in this area, she's probably at one of these businesses." Bennett studied the map. There had to be hundreds of businesses in that area, everything from chain stores to small family-owned restaurants. Finding her would be like searching for a needle in a haystack, but he had never backed down from a challenge before. "Thank you, Jeremy," Bennett said. "I'll take it from here." "You're going to look for her yourself?" Jeremy asked, surprised. "I have some free time this week," Bennett said, which was a lie. He never had free time, but he would make time for this. The next day, Bennett started his search. He walked through the 6-block radius Jeremy had identified, looking into restaurants and shops, hoping to catch a glimpse of the woman from the security footage. He felt slightly ridiculous, like a character in a movie, but he could not stop himself. He needed to find her. Days turned into weeks. Bennett found himself returning to the same area again and again, walking the streets during his lunch breaks and after work. His staff thought he was losing his mind. His schedule was packed with meetings and conference calls, yet he kept carving out time to wander through Midtown looking for a woman whose name he did not even know. "Sir, you have the board meeting in 20 minutes, Jeremy reminded him one afternoon when Bennett was about to head out yet again. "I know," Bennett said, grabbing his coat. "I'll be back in time." He walked quickly through the cold February air, his breath visible in front of him. The city was gray and slushy, the remnants of last week's snowfall melting into dirty piles along the sidewalks. Bennett checked his watch and realized he would have to turn back soon if he wanted to make the meeting. But just as he was about to give up for the day, he saw her. She was coming out of a small Italian restaurant called Marcello's, wearing a black coat and carrying a backpack. Her hair was down this time, falling past her shoulders, and she looked tired. Bennett's heart started racing. After months of searching, he had finally found her. He started to walk toward her, but before he could call out, she was already moving down the street in the opposite direction. Bennett followed her, keeping a reasonable distance. He did not want to scare her, but he also did not want to lose her again. She walked 3 blocks and then descended into the subway station. Bennett hesitated at the top of the stairs. He could follow her onto the train, but that felt creepy even by his own standards. Instead, he turned around and walked back to Marcello's. If she had come from there, she probably worked there. He would come back later and ask for her. But when Bennett returned to Marcello's that evening after his meetings, he was told that the woman who fit his description was not working that night. He asked if he could leave a message for her, but the hostess looked at him suspiciously. "We don't give out information about our employees," she said firmly. "I'm not trying to be weird," Bennett said, realizing how this must look. "She returned something valuable to me a few months ago, and I just want to thank her properly." The hostess's expression softened slightly. "If you want to leave your name and number, I can pass it along to her, but I can't promise she'll call you." Bennett wrote down his information on a napkin and handed it to the hostess. "Please make sure she gets this. It's important. The hostess took the napkin and nodded. Bennett left the restaurant feeling both relieved and anxious. He had finally found her, but now his fate was in someone else's hands. Would she call him? Would she even remember returning the wallet? Natalie did not receive Bennett's message for 3 days. She had picked up extra shifts to cover for another server who was out sick, and by the time the hostess remembered to give her the napkin with his information, it was already crumpled and stained with coffee. "Some guy came by looking for you," the hostess, Carmen, said casually as they were closing up one night. "Said you returned something to him. He left his number." Natalie took the napkin and tried to make out the writing. The name was smudged, but the number was legible. "Did he say what I returned?" "Nope. Just said it was valuable and he wanted to thank you." Natalie had returned a lot of things over the years. She was the type of person who turned in lost phones and wallets to customer service desks, who mailed back letters that were delivered to the wrong address. She honestly could not remember anyone specifically. "Weird," she said, stuffing the napkin into her pocket. "Thanks for letting me know." She did not think about it again until she was doing laundry 2 days later and found the napkin in her jeans. She pulled it out and stared at the number. Something about this felt familiar, and then she remembered. The wallet. The expensive leather wallet she had returned months ago to that fancy office building. "Oh my God," she said out loud to her empty apartment. The CEO guy was looking for her. Why? She sat down on her bed and stared at the number. Part of her wanted to just throw the napkin away and forget about it. What could a billionaire possibly want from her that wasn't strange or uncomfortable? But another part of her was curious. He had gone through the effort of tracking her down just to say thank you. That was kind of sweet, in an over-the-top, slightly obsessive way. Before she could talk herself out of it, Natalie picked up her phone and dialed the number. It rang 3 times before someone answered. "This is Bennett Quinn." His voice was deeper than she had expected, smooth and confident. Natalie suddenly felt very nervous. "Hi, this is Natalie Bishop. I think you've been looking for me." There was a pause, and then Bennett said, "Natalie." "Yes, thank you so much for calling. I've been hoping to hear from you. The hostess at my restaurant said you stopped by." "Something about me returning something to you, my wallet," Bennett said. "You returned it back in November. I wanted to thank you in person, but by the time I actually received it, I had no way to contact you." "Oh, that," Natalie said. "It was no big deal. I'm glad you got it back." "It was a big deal to me," Bennett said. "That wallet was important, and you went out of your way to make sure I got it back. I would really like to thank you properly." "Can I take you to dinner?" Natalie's first instinct was to say no. This felt too strange, too much like the beginning of a story that could go wrong in 100 different ways. But there was something genuine in his voice, something that made her want to say yes. "Dinner," she repeated. "Just dinner," Bennett said. "As a thank you. Nothing weird, I promise." Natalie laughed despite herself. "The fact that you felt the need to specify nothing weird is kind of weird." "Fair point," Bennett said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "But I'm serious. I've spent the last few months trying to find you. The least you can do is let me buy you a meal." "You spent months looking for me?" Natalie asked, not sure if she should be flattered or concerned. "I know how that sounds," Bennett said quickly. "But yes, I really wanted to thank you, so what do you say, dinner?" Natalie thought about it for a moment. What was the worst that could happen? He seemed nice enough on the phone, and it was just dinner in a public place. "Okay," she said. "Dinner sounds nice." "Great," Bennett said, and she could hear the relief in his voice. "Are you free this Saturday? I work until 9, but I'm free after that." "How about I pick you up at 9:30? We can go somewhere in your neighborhood, wherever you're comfortable." They made the arrangements, and Natalie gave him the address of a diner near her apartment. It was casual and public, the kind of place where she felt safe. After she hung up, she sat on her bed staring at her phone. She had just agreed to have dinner with a billionaire CEO. This was officially the strangest thing that had ever happened to her. Saturday came faster than Natalie expected. She changed her outfit 3 times before settling on jeans and a nice sweater. This was just a thank-you dinner, nothing fancy, but she still wanted to look presentable. She arrived at the diner 10 minutes early and sat in a booth near the window, nervously tapping her fingers on the table. Bennett arrived exactly on time. Natalie recognized him immediately from the photos she had seen online, but in person he was more striking. He was tall, probably over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and an air of confidence that came from years of being in charge. But when he smiled at her as he approached the booth, there was something warm and disarming about it. "Natalie?" he asked, even though he clearly knew who she was. "That's me," she said, standing up to shake his hand. His grip was firm but not aggressive. "It's nice to meet you, Bennett." "Please call me Ben," he said, sliding into the booth across from her. "And thank you again for agreeing to meet me. I know this whole situation is a little unconventional." "That's one word for it," Natalie said with a slight smile. "I have to admit I was surprised when I got your message. I didn't think returning a wallet was that big of a deal." "It was to me," Ben said seriously. "That wallet was a gift from my father. I thought I'd lost it forever." A waitress came by to take their orders. Ben ordered a burger and fries, which surprised Natalie. She had expected him to order something more sophisticated, maybe a steak or some expensive entree that would make her feel self-conscious about her own order. Instead, he seemed perfectly comfortable in the casual diner environment. "So you work at Marcello's?" Ben asked after the waitress left. "Yeah, I've been there for about 3 years. It pays the bills while I work on my real passion." "Which is writing," Natalie said. "I'm working on a novel. Well, trying to work on a novel. It's harder than I thought it would be." "What's it about?" Ben asked, and he sounded genuinely interested. Natalie usually hated this question because her answer always sounded pretentious or half-formed. But there was something about the way Ben was looking at her, really listening, that made her want to be honest. "It's about a woman who moves to New York to start over after a bad breakup, and she ends up finding herself in ways she never expected. It's kind of autobiographical, I guess." "That sounds amazing," Ben said. "How much have you written?" "About 60,000 words. I'm maybe halfway through." "But it's slow going when you're working full-time." Their food arrived, and they ate in comfortable conversation. Ben told her about his company and how he had built it up from a single hotel his family owned to a global chain. He talked about the challenges of managing such a large business and the travel that came with it. Natalie found herself relaxing as she listened to him. He was not what she had expected at all. There was no arrogance, no sense that he thought he was better than her because of his money. He was just a person telling his story. "What made you return the wallet?" Ben asked at one point. "You could have easily kept the cash and thrown the rest away. No one would have known." Natalie shrugged. "That's not who I am. My parents raised me to do the right thing, even when it's inconvenient. Besides, I figured whoever lost it probably needed it back." "Well, I'm glad you're that kind of person," Ben said. "The world needs more people like you." They talked for over 2 hours, long after they had finished eating. Natalie learned that Ben had taken over the company after his father died suddenly 5 years ago. It had been a difficult transition, and he still felt the pressure of living up to his father's legacy. He was close with his mother, who lived in Connecticut and called him every Sunday without fail. He had no siblings and admitted that his life could be lonely sometimes despite being surrounded by people all day. "What about you?" Ben asked. "Any family in the city?" "My parents live upstate near Albany," Natalie said. "I have a younger brother who's in college. We're close, but I don't get to see them as much as I'd like. Money's tight and the bus tickets add up." Ben nodded, and Natalie saw something shift in his expression. She realized he probably had private jets and drivers, that money had never been a barrier to seeing the people he loved. But he did not say anything that made her feel small or judged. He just listened. When they finally left the diner, Ben walked Natalie back to her apartment building. The night was cold, and she pulled her coat tighter as they walked. "Thank you for tonight," Ben said when they reached her door. "I really enjoyed talking with you." "Me too," Natalie said, and she meant it. "This was nice." "Can I see you again?" Ben asked. "And not just as a thank you. I'd really like to get to know you better." Natalie's heart skipped a beat. She had been trying not to think about what this dinner meant, if it was just a polite gesture or something more. "I'd like that," she said softly. Ben smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "How about next weekend? I could pick you up after your shift again." "Okay," Natalie said. "That sounds good." They exchanged numbers, and Ben waited until she was safely inside her building before walking away. Natalie climbed the stairs to her apartment feeling lighter than she had in months. She could not stop smiling. Over the next few weeks, Natalie and Ben fell into a pattern. He would pick her up after her shifts at the restaurant, and they would go to diners or casual restaurants where they could talk for hours. Ben was careful not to overwhelm her with expensive dates or grand gestures. He seemed to understand that she would be uncomfortable with that kind of attention. Instead, he met her where she was in her world on her terms. Natalie found herself looking forward to their time together more and more. Ben was easy to talk to, funny in an understated way, and genuinely interested in her life. He asked about her writing and encouraged her to keep working on her novel. He wanted to know about her family, her friends, her dreams. And in turn, he opened up to her about his own struggles and fears. She learned that running a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars did not make him immune to self-doubt or loneliness. It was during their fifth date, while they were walking through Central Park on a surprisingly warm March afternoon, that Ben took her hand. The gesture was simple, almost casual, but it sent electricity through Natalie's body. She looked up at him, and he was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Is this okay?" he asked quietly. "Yeah," Natalie said. "This is okay." They walked hand in hand through the park, talking about everything and nothing. When they finally sat down on a bench overlooking the pond, Ben turned to her with a serious expression. "I need to tell you something," he said. "I've been thinking about this a lot, and I don't want there to be any confusion about how I feel." Natalie's heart started racing. "Okay." "I really like you, Natalie," Ben said. "More than I've liked anyone in a long time. I know we've only been seeing each other for a few weeks, but I can't stop thinking about you. I want to see where this goes. I want to be with you if you want that too." Natalie felt tears prick at her eyes. She had been so afraid to let herself hope for this, to believe that someone like Ben could really want to be with someone like her. But looking at him now, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes, she knew he was telling the truth. "I want that too," she said. "I've been trying not to get my hopes up, but I really like you, Ben. A lot." He smiled and leaned in to kiss her. It was soft and sweet and perfect, and when they pulled apart, Natalie felt like she was floating. They spent the rest of the afternoon in the park, talking about what they wanted their relationship to look like. Ben admitted that his schedule was demanding, and that there would be times when he had to travel or work late. Natalie told him about her own commitments to her job and her writing. They both agreed that they would make it work, that they would prioritize each other as much as possible. As spring turned to summer, Natalie and Ben grew closer. He met her parents during a weekend trip upstate, and her mother fell in love with him immediately. Her father was more cautious, protective of his daughter, but even he warmed up to Ben by the end of the visit. Ben's mother, Margaret, invited Natalie to dinner at her home in Connecticut, and Natalie was nervous the entire drive there. But Margaret turned out to be warm and welcoming, clearly thrilled that her son had found someone who made him happy. "He's been alone for too long," Margaret told Natalie privately while they were doing dishes after dinner. "I was starting to worry he would never let anyone in. But you've changed that. Thank you for making him smile again." Natalie felt a lump form in her throat. "He makes me happy too," she said. "I've never felt this way about anyone before." Margaret squeezed her hand. "Hold on to that feeling, dear. It's rare and precious." By the time fall arrived, Natalie and Ben had been together for 6 months. Their relationship had deepened in ways that both surprised and delighted them. They spent most nights together, either at Ben's penthouse apartment or Natalie's tiny studio. Ben never made her feel bad about the difference in their living situations. He was just as comfortable on her second-hand couch as he was in his designer furniture, but there were challenges too. Ben's work took him out of town frequently, and there were times when Natalie felt the weight of his absence. She was also acutely aware of the scrutiny that came with dating someone in his position. There were photographers outside his building sometimes, and a few gossip websites had picked up on their relationship. Natalie hated seeing photos of herself online, hated the comments that speculated about who she was and why Ben was with her. "Ignore them," Ben told her one night after she had made the mistake of reading the comments section on a particularly nasty article. "They don't know you. They don't know us. It's hard to ignore when they're calling me a gold digger," Natalie said, tears streaming down her face. "When they're saying you're only with me because you feel sorry for me." Ben pulled her into his arms. "Listen to me. I love you because of who you are. I love your kindness and your intelligence and your strength. I love the way you see the world and the way you make me want to be a better person. Anyone who can't see that is blind and not worth your time." It was the first time he had said he loved her, and Natalie pulled back to look at him. "You love me." "I love you," Ben said firmly. "I've loved you for a while now. I was just waiting for the right moment to tell you." "I love you too," Natalie said, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "So much." They held each other on her small couch, and Natalie felt something settle in her chest. This was real. They were real, and no amount of gossip or speculation could change that. The following spring, a year after they had first met at the diner, Ben surprised Natalie with a trip. He had been secretive about the details, only telling her to pack for warm weather and take a week off from the restaurant. When they arrived at the airport, she realized they were flying private. "Ben, this is too much," she protested as they boarded the small plane. "Nothing is too much for you," he said, kissing her forehead. "Just enjoy it. You deserve this." They flew to a private island in the Caribbean where Ben's company owned a resort. It was paradise, all white sand beaches and crystal clear water. They spent their days swimming and lounging on the beach, and their nights having romantic dinners under the stars. It was the most relaxed Natalie had ever seen Ben. Away from work and obligations, he was playful and affectionate, constantly touching her and making her laugh. On their last night, Ben took her to a secluded spot on the beach where he had arranged for a private dinner. There were candles everywhere, creating a soft glow in the darkness. They ate fresh seafood and drank wine, talking about the future. "I've been thinking about something," Ben said as they finished dessert, "about us and where we're headed." Natalie felt her heart start to race. "What about it?" "I want you to move in with me," Ben said. "Officially. I know you've been staying at my place more often than your own apartment lately, but I want it to be real. I want to wake up with you every morning and come home to you every night." Natalie felt tears prick at her eyes. She had been thinking about this too, wondering when or if Ben would ask. "Are you sure? That's a big step." "I've never been more sure of anything," Ben said. "I love you, Natalie. I want to build a life with you." "I love you too," Natalie said. "And yes, I would love to move in with you." Ben stood up from his chair and walked around the table to her. He pulled her to her feet and kissed her deeply. When they pulled apart, he was grinning. "You've just made me the happiest man alive." They moved Natalie's belongings into Ben's penthouse the following month. It did not take long since she did not have much, but Ben made sure she felt like the space was truly hers. He cleared out closets and drawers for her clothes, made room on the bookshelves for her books, and set up a beautiful desk near the windows where she could write. "This is your home now," he told her as they stood in the living room surrounded by boxes. "I want you to feel comfortable here. Change anything you want, decorate however you like. This is ours, not just mine." Living together was an adjustment but a welcome one. They learned each other's routines and quirks. Ben discovered that Natalie was not a morning person and needed at least 1 cup of coffee before she could form coherent sentences. Natalie learned that Ben liked to work out at 5 in the morning and often came back to bed afterward to cuddle with her before his day really started. Natalie also started to take her writing more seriously with Ben's encouragement. She cut back on her shifts at the restaurant and dedicated more time to finishing her novel. Ben read every chapter as she completed it, offering thoughtful feedback and endless enthusiasm. When she finally typed the last sentence of her manuscript, she cried with relief and pride. Ben took her out to celebrate, and they spent the evening toasting to her accomplishment. "I'm so proud of you," Ben said, raising his glass. "You did something that most people only dream about. You finished a novel." "I couldn't have done it without you," Natalie said. "You gave me the time and space to focus on it. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." "That's what partners do," Ben said simply. "We support each other." Natalie sent her manuscript to several literary agents, and the rejections started coming in quickly. Each one stung, but Ben was there to comfort her and remind her that every successful author had faced rejection. J.K. Rowling was rejected 12 times, he told her. Stephen King's first novel was rejected 30 times. You just have to keep trying. His faith in her kept her going. She revised her manuscript based on the feedback she received and sent it out again. And then, after months of waiting, she got an email from an agent who wanted to represent her. Natalie screamed so loudly that Ben came running from his home office, thinking something was wrong. When she showed him the email, he picked her up and spun her around the living room. "I knew it," he shouted. "I knew someone would see how talented you are." The process of publishing was long and sometimes frustrating, but having Ben by her side made it bearable. He celebrated every milestone with her, from signing with the agent to getting the book deal to seeing the cover design for the first time. When the novel was finally released a year later, Ben threw her a launch party at one of his hotels. All of her friends and family were there, along with colleagues from the restaurant and people Ben worked with. It was one of the best nights of Natalie's life. 2 years after they had met, on a crisp November evening, Ben took Natalie back to the spot where he had first seen her. They stood on the corner of 5th Avenue where he had dropped his wallet and she had chased after him. "You remember this place?" Ben asked. "Of course," Natalie said. "This is where the whole crazy story started." "I think about that day a lot," Ben said. "How easily we could have missed each other. If I hadn't dropped my wallet, if you hadn't chased after me, if you hadn't taken the time to track down my office. There were so many moments where this could have gone differently." "But it didn't," Natalie said, squeezing his hand. "We found each other." "We did," Ben agreed, "and I don't ever want to lose you again." He pulled a small box from his pocket and dropped to one knee right there on the sidewalk. Natalie gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Natalie Bishop," Ben said, opening the box to reveal a beautiful diamond ring. "You changed my life the day you returned my wallet. You showed me what kindness and goodness look like in a world that can be pretty cold and cynical. You've made me laugh, you've challenged me, you've loved me even when I didn't deserve it. I can't imagine my life without you in it. Will you marry me?" Tears were streaming down Natalie's face. "Yes," she said. "Yes, of course I'll marry me." Ben slipped the ring on her finger and stood up to kiss her. People walking by stopped to clap and cheer, and Natalie laughed through her tears. This was perfect. This was everything she had ever wanted and more. They were married 6 months later in a small ceremony at Margaret's home in Connecticut. Natalie wore a simple white dress that made her feel like a princess, and Ben looked impossibly handsome in his suit. Their families and closest friends were there to witness them exchange vows under a canopy of flowers. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Ben kissed her so deeply that everyone erupted in applause and whistles. At the reception, Natalie's father gave a toast that made her cry. "When Natalie first told me she was dating a CEO, I'll admit I was worried," he said. "I thought about all the ways it could go wrong, all the reasons why someone from his world and someone from ours might not work out. But Ben proved me wrong from the first moment I met him. He loves my daughter not for what she can do for him, but for who she is, and that's all any father can hope for." Ben's mother also gave a toast, talking about how happy she was that her son had found someone who truly understood him. "Bennett has always been driven and ambitious," Margaret said. "But he needed someone to remind him that there's more to life than work. Natalie has brought joy and light into his world, and for that, I will be forever grateful." The first year of marriage was blissful. They traveled together, with Ben showing Natalie parts of the world she had only dreamed of visiting. They went to Paris and Rome and Tokyo, exploring new cities and creating memories that would last a lifetime. But they also treasured the quiet moments at home, cooking dinner together and watching movies on the couch, and talking late into the night about everything and nothing. Natalie's career as an author was taking off. Her first novel had been well received, and she was working on a second book. Ben continued to support her in every way he could, reading her drafts and brainstorming ideas with her. He was her biggest fan and her most honest critic, always pushing her to be better while also reminding her to be kind to herself. 3 years into their marriage, Natalie found out she was pregnant. She had been feeling tired and nauseous for weeks, but she had assumed it was stress from working on her book. When the pregnancy test came back positive, she sat on the bathroom floor staring at it for 10 minutes before she could process what it meant. She told Ben that night over dinner. He had made reservations at a fancy restaurant, but Natalie asked if they could stay home instead. She cooked pasta, his favorite, and they ate on the couch while watching a cooking show. "I have something to tell you," Natalie said when they had finished eating. Ben muted the television and turned to her. "What's up?" "I'm pregnant," she said, watching his face carefully. For a moment, Ben just stared at her. Then his eyes filled with tears and a huge smile spread across his face. "Really? We're having a baby." "We're having a baby," Natalie confirmed, starting to cry herself. Ben pulled her into his arms and held her tight. "This is the best news I've ever gotten. I can't believe we're going to be parents." They spent the rest of the evening talking about the future, about names and nursery colors, and all the things they would teach their child. Ben was already planning, thinking about how to balance work with fatherhood, how to make sure he was present for all the important moments. Natalie loved seeing this side of him, the side that was tender and excited and maybe a little scared. The pregnancy was not easy. Natalie had severe morning sickness for the first few months, and Ben was incredibly patient with her. He held her hair back when she was sick, brought her crackers and ginger ale, and never complained when she sent him out at midnight to get specific foods she was craving. His mother came to visit often, bringing meals and advice and stories about when she was pregnant with Ben. They found out they were having a boy, and Ben cried when they saw the ultrasound. "A son," he kept saying. "We're having a son." They decided to name him James after Ben's father. Margaret was touched beyond words when they told her. "He would have been so proud," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Of both of you." James Bennett Quinn was born on a sunny day in September. The delivery was long and difficult, and Ben never left Natalie's side. He held her hand through every contraction, wiped the sweat from her forehead, and whispered words of encouragement in her ear. When their son finally arrived, screaming and perfect, Ben cut the umbilical cord with shaking hands. "He's beautiful," Ben said, staring down at the tiny baby in his arms. "He looks just like you. He has your eyes," Natalie said softly. "And your nose." They spent the first night in the hospital just staring at James, unable to believe that they had created this perfect little person. Ben barely slept, too afraid to miss a single moment. Fatherhood transformed Ben in ways Natalie had not expected. He took a month off work to be home with her and the baby, something that shocked everyone who knew him. He changed diapers and did midnight feedings and rocked James to sleep. He was patient and gentle and completely devoted to their son. When Ben finally went back to work, he made sure to be home every evening for dinner and bath time. He refused to travel unless absolutely necessary, and when he did have to go out of town, he was miserable the entire time. Natalie would send him videos of James, and Ben would watch them over and over, counting down the hours until he could come home. Their life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Natalie continued to write, now working from home so she could be with James. Ben continued to run his company, but he had learned to delegate more and trust his team. They had a nanny who helped during the day, but they made sure to spend as much time as possible with their son. James grew quickly, hitting all his milestones and developing a personality that was equal parts stubborn and sweet. He had Ben's determination and Natalie's kindness, and they both loved him more than they thought possible. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Ben surprised Natalie with a weekend getaway. His mother came to stay with James, and they flew to a cabin in the mountains where they could just be together. "I can't believe it's been 5 years," Natalie said as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Best 5 years of my life," Ben said, putting his arm around her. "Do you ever think about that day you returned my wallet, how different things could have been?" "All the time," Natalie admitted. "I almost didn't chase after you. I was running late for work and I almost just let you go. But something made me run after that taxi." "I'm glad you did," Ben said. "I spent 6 months looking for you and it was worth every second. Finding you was the best thing that ever happened to me." "Finding you was the best thing that happened to me too," Natalie said. "You gave me a life I never thought I could have. Not because of the money or the success, but because you love me for exactly who I am. You've never tried to change me or make me into someone else." "Why would I want to change you?" Ben asked. "You're perfect." "I'm not perfect," Natalie said with a laugh. "Far from it. You're perfect for me," Ben said, "and that's all that matters." They spent the weekend hiking and talking and making love like they were newlyweds again. It was a reminder of how far they had come and how strong their foundation was. When they returned home to James, who ran into his father's arms with a squeal of delight, Natalie felt her heart swell with gratitude. Over the next few years, their family continued to grow and change. They had a daughter, Emma, who arrived 2 years after James. She had Natalie's brown hair and Ben's blue eyes, and she was sweet and gentle in a way that balanced out her brother's intensity. James adored his little sister, always wanting to hold her and play with her. Natalie published 3 more novels, each one more successful than the last. She became a New York Times best-selling author, and Ben was so proud he could barely contain himself. He kept copies of all her books in his office and made sure everyone he met knew that his wife was a famous writer. Ben's company continued to expand, but he never let work consume him the way it had before he met Natalie. He had learned that success meant nothing if you did not have people to share it with. He made time for family dinners and school plays and weekend trips. He was present in a way that his own father had struggled to be, and he was determined to break that cycle. When James was 10 and Emma was 8, Ben surprised the family with a big announcement. He had been working on something in secret, and he could not wait any longer to share it. "I've decided to step back from day-to-day operations at the company," he said over dinner one night. "I'm going to remain chairman of the board, but I'm hiring a CEO to run things." Natalie stared at him in shock. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious," Ben said. "I've spent 20 years building this company, and it's time for someone else to take the reins. I want to spend more time with you and the kids. I want to travel and have adventures and not miss any more moments." The kids cheered, and Natalie felt tears well up in her eyes. "Are you sure about this? The company is your life's work." "No," Ben said firmly. "You and these two are my life's work. The company is just what I do. You're who I am." The transition was smooth, and Ben found that he did not miss the constant pressure and demands nearly as much as he thought he would. He loved having more time to be present with his family. He coached James's soccer team and helped Emma with her art projects. He and Natalie took long walks in the evenings after the kids were in bed, talking about their days and their dreams. They went on a big family trip to Europe, spending a month exploring different countries. Ben taught the kids about history and architecture, while Natalie encouraged them to try new foods and embrace different cultures. It was exhausting and chaotic and absolutely perfect. One evening, while they were in Italy watching the sunset over the Tuscan countryside, Ben turned to Natalie with a soft smile. "Do you remember when we first met and you told me about your novel, about the woman who moves to New York to start over and finds herself?" "Of course," Natalie said. "That feels like a lifetime ago." "In a way, that's what happened to us," Ben said. "We both found ourselves by finding each other. I was so focused on work and success that I had forgotten how to really live. And you showed me what it meant to be present, to appreciate the small moments, to love without reservation." "You showed me those things too," Natalie said. "Before I met you, I was just surviving, working to pay bills, writing in whatever spare time I had, dreaming of a different life. You gave me the freedom to pursue my dreams, but more than that, you showed me what it means to be truly loved." They held hands and watched their children playing in the grass, chasing fireflies as the sky turned pink and gold. This was happiness, Natalie thought. This was what she had been searching for all along, even before she knew what she was looking for. Years passed, and their love only deepened. James went off to college, studying business like his father but with a passion for sustainability and ethical practices. Emma developed into a talented artist, and Ben and Natalie supported her decision to pursue art school. They were both so different from each other, but they were kind and thoughtful and exactly who they were meant to be. Ben and Natalie grew older together, their hair turning gray, their faces gaining lines from years of laughter and tears. They traveled the world, wrote books together, volunteered with charities that mattered to them. They became grandparents when James married his college sweetheart and had twin girls. Emma found love with a fellow artist, and they had a son who reminded everyone of Ben with his determination and focus. On their 30th wedding anniversary, Ben took Natalie back to Fifth Avenue, to the spot where it had all begun. It was a cold November day, just like the day she had chased after his taxi with his wallet in hand. 30 years, Ben said, holding her hand. Can you believe it? It feels like yesterday and forever ago at the same time, Natalie said. I still remember exactly how I felt that day. I was frustrated that I was running late, annoyed that someone had been careless enough to drop their wallet. I had no idea that picking up that wallet would change my entire life. I spent 6 months trying to find you, Ben said. People thought I was crazy, obsessing over someone I had never even met, but I couldn't let it go. Something told me that you were important, that I needed to find you. And you did, Natalie said softly. And I did, Ben agreed. And every single day since then has been a gift. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Natalie Quinn. I would drop that wallet 1,000 times if it meant I got to spend my life with you. Natalie felt tears stream down her face. After 3 decades together, he could still make her cry with his words. I love you, she said. I will always love you. I love you too, Ben said. Always and forever. They stood there on that corner, the city bustling around them, and kissed like they were young again. Passers-by smiled as they walked past, and Natalie thought about how many stories were unfolding all around them at this very moment. How many lives were intersecting and changing in ways big and small. That night, surrounded by their children and grandchildren at a restaurant Ben had rented out for the occasion, Natalie stood up to give a toast. She looked around the table at all the faces she loved, at the family she and Ben had built together, and felt overwhelming gratitude. 30 years ago, I returned a wallet to a stranger, she said. I did it because it was the right thing to do, because that's how I was raised. I had no expectations, no idea that it would lead to anything more than a simple thank you. But that one small act of kindness changed everything. It brought me the love of my life, this beautiful family, and more happiness than I ever thought possible. So my advice to all of you is this: never underestimate the power of doing the right thing, even when it's inconvenient. You never know what doors it might open or what magic it might bring into your life. Everyone raised their glasses, and Ben stood up to kiss her. Their grandchildren giggled, and their children smiled with tears in their eyes. This was love, Natalie thought. Not just the romantic kind, though that was certainly part of it, but the deep, abiding love of a life built together through challenges and triumphs, through ordinary days and extraordinary moments. As the evening wore on and the family celebrated, Ben pulled Natalie aside onto a quiet balcony. The city spread out below them, lights twinkling like stars. He put his arms around her waist and rested his chin on her shoulder. "Happy anniversary, my love," he whispered. "Happy anniversary," Natalie said, leaning back against him. They stood there together, just like they had stood together through everything life had thrown at them. Through joy and sorrow, through success and setbacks, through the beautiful chaos of raising a family and building a life. They had found each other against all odds, and they had chosen each other every single day since. "You know what the best part is?" Ben asked. "What?" Natalie said. "I still get excited when I see you walk into a room. After 30 years, you still make my heart race. That's how I know we got it right." Natalie turned in his arms to face him. "We definitely got it right," she said. "I wouldn't change a single thing. Not even the 6 months I spent obsessively trying to find you," Ben asked with a grin. "Especially not that," Natalie said, laughing. "That's my favorite part of the story, the CEO who dropped everything to find the girl who returned his wallet. "Best decision I ever made," Ben said. They kissed as the city hummed with life around them. Two people who had found something rare and precious and held onto it with everything they had. Their story had started with a simple act of kindness. A wallet dropped and returned, and it had blossomed into a love that would last forever. Inside, their family was laughing and talking, creating memories that would be passed down through generations. The twins were teaching their grandfather James how to play a game on his phone while Emma showed her mother sketches for her next art show. Ben's mother, now in her 90s but still sharp as ever, was holding her great-grandson and telling him stories about his grandfather. This was their legacy, Natalie thought. Not the money or the success or the published books, but the love they had built and shared, the family they had created, the kindness they had shown to others. It had all started with a wallet on a rainy November day, but it had become so much more. As they walked back inside to rejoin their family, Ben squeezed Natalie's hand. She looked up at him and saw everything she needed to see in his eyes. Love, devotion, gratitude, the same things she felt reflected back at him. They had built something beautiful together, something that would endure long after they were gone. And it had all begun because a woman had chased after a stranger to return something he had lost, never knowing that in doing so, she would find everything she had been looking for. Years later, when people asked them about their love story, both Ben and Natalie would smile and say the same thing. Sometimes the smallest moments lead to the biggest changes. Sometimes doing the right thing brings you exactly where you need to be. And sometimes, when you least expect it, you find the person who will change your life forever. Their grandchildren would ask to hear the story again and again, never tiring of the tale of how their grandmother had chased after a taxi in the rain, how their grandfather had spent months searching for a woman whose name he didn't know, how one lost wallet had led to a lifetime of love. And every time they told the story, surrounded by the family they had built and the life they had created together, Ben and Natalie would look at each other and know they were the lucky ones, not because of the money or the success, but because they had found each other. Because they had taken a chance on something that seemed impossible and turned it into something real and lasting and true. That was their legacy. That was their love story. And it was more than either of them could have ever dreamed of that rainy day on Fifth Avenue, when a wallet fell into a puddle and changed two lives forever.